Yo, what's happening, everybody? So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the Vice article that came out recently regarding the Animal Holocaust, which is something that I've been very focused on speaking about very clearly, very honestly, without sugarcoating the truth. Because I believe if we sugarcoat the truth, if we don't call it a Holocaust, people won't take it seriously as they would if it was a Holocaust. And if we tell them it's something else, anything else, they won't think of it as a Holocaust, so it's a problem. So, that seems pretty obvious to me. Let's make the world take animal rights as seriously as the animals deserve, which is nowhere near what is happening currently in our mainstream world. So, what I want to tell you is how ridiculous what they did to my interview questions was. Instead of writing an article about 2.7 trillion earthlings that get raped and tortured and murdered every year, which is quite the article, and then the victims are feasted on by people who think they love the victims. They call themselves animal lovers. So people just eating Holocaust victims all day, every day, and killing themselves from heart disease, cancers, all kinds of shit like that. And this isn't news. But what was newsworthy for Vice was to make this about white veganism and to make it about the terminology I use rather than the actual atrocity that is taking place. Absolutely, totally ridiculous. And I knew that was going to happen because I looked up the author, and as soon as I looked it up, I was like, yeah, this person's going to do exactly this kind of article, and that's exactly what they did. But anyway, thanks for getting the Animal Holocaust out there. Even if all you do is get the terminology out there, it's a good start. Let's get the conversation started. What I thought I would do today is tell you my actual responses to her questions. Because often I'll freestyle talk about this, but I spent a little bit of time putting together my responses to her. So I'm just going to read them to you, questions and answer format, so that you know exactly how I feel about this topic and the types of answers that I have to the questions that people ask regarding if I should be using these words, you know, how I feel about if Jewish people get offended and all these kind of things. So let's go through it. The first question she asked me was, how do you respond when people say your comparison of meat eating and dairy eating with the Holocaust is anti-Semitic? So I wrote, there's absolutely nothing anti-Semitic about it. The definition of a Holocaust is a mass slaughter of innocent beings. Humans murder 2.7 trillion beings annually. All I'm doing is describing their plight with the most accurate terminology available. There are many parallels with the World War II Holocaust, such as branding and tattoos on the victims, giving them a number, using gas chambers, separating families, etc. There are also some differences. For example, the Nazis were intending to eradicate the Jews, whereas the animals, we exterminate them while simultaneously breeding more into existence. The difference is irrelevant of whether the animal's experience constitutes a Holocaust, as intention is not included in the definition. The bottom line is the Animal Holocaust has been going on long before any other. It is still happening now, and exposing that fact has nothing to do with the Holocaust during World War II. Next question. How do you respond to people, particularly people of color and religious minorities, who say they don't want to go vegan because of my rhetoric? I wrote, people should go vegan regardless of whether I've said something they find offensive. Veganism is a moral obligation for anyone who is opposed to slavery, torture, and murder of innocent beings. Whether they like or dislike certain vegans is irrelevant. Everyone who can be vegan should be vegan. To not be vegan is to support the worst types of atrocities and is not in alignment with living a moral life. At all. Third question. How do you respond to people who say your Holocaust comparisons alienate Jewish people from the vegan movement and cause harm? My answer. No one should be looking for excuses to not be vegan, and that includes Jewish people. I would think they'd be the first ones to support the animal rights movement, and many Jewish people are vegan and also describe what is happening to animals as a Holocaust. They know exactly what a Holocaust is through direct experience and how much suffering it causes. If anything, accurately describing the animal's plight as a Holocaust should get Jewish people and all people to realize how serious this matter is and join the movement immediately. If they don't, It's probably because they are too culturally conditioned to see eating the flesh of Holocaust victims as normal. Or they simply don't see non-human animals as victims deserving of their consideration, similar to how Nazis saw Jewish people. Number 4. How do you respond to people who say your rape comparisons alienate women from the vegan movement and cause harm? My answer: it is not a comparison. Animals are raped. Animals are sexually penetrated using physical force without their consent. They have semen injected into their vaginas and they're forced to have pregnancies. When they give birth, their babies are stolen from them and they're used as milk slaves until they're eventually murdered when they start to produce less profit. I would hope that women, especially feminists, would see the obvious injustice in this and go vegan immediately, as anything less than vegan means supporting rape and other forms of violence against female, non-human earthlings. 5. How do you respond to people who say your slavery comparisons alienate black people from the vegan movement and cause harm? I don't see how simply stating the fact that animals are enslaved would make anyone feel alienated. They need to accept the fact, just like the rest of us, that non-human animals can also be enslaved and deserve their situation described accurately. There is nothing wrong with using the correct terminology, and anyone more offended by this perfectly accurate description than the actual slavery should shift their focus from being offended to helping the current enslaved earthlings. How do you respond to people who say your words can cause a lot of harm to people, especially since you have such a large platform? If people are so easily hurt that hearing a word can cause them significant trauma, I would suggest that they have a lot of healing to do before they use the internet, which has violence and triggering words all over it. They should probably avoid watching TV as well. The truth is, they aren't actually hurt by hearing the word Holocaust. They simply disagree that non-human earthlings deserve to have their situation described using the same terminology that was used to describe human atrocities. And that is because they are speciesists. Speciesism is analogous to racism and sexism. It means we judge the worth of a non-human being based on which species they are a member of, which is just as ignorant as judging a human's worth based on what color skin they have. Using my large platform, I have helped convert thousands of people to the vegan lifestyle, thereby reducing huge amounts of violence as opposed to causing it. Anything you'd like to add? Yes, I would. If you aren't vegan, you are contributing to an insane, sick, and violent cultural norm that is causing the suffering and death of 2.7 trillion earthlings every year. It needs to stop immediately. Join challenge22.com to get assistance in transitioning to a vegan lifestyle, which is the healthiest, most ethical, only ethical, I should have wrote, and most environmentally friendly. I did write it. I wrote, which is the healthiest, most ethical, most environmentally friendly, and only moral lifestyle there is. Join the revolution of peace, justice, and respect for all beings. They turned that conversation into a conversation about a white person talking about veganism and saying that because I'm a white person who is, has a following, that I am alienating other people. No, I never say that. I always say this is an available lifestyle to everybody. It's the cheapest lifestyle in terms of food. It is foods that are at every single supermarket already: fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, seeds, and beans. It will save your life and probably add years to it. It can get you off medications. It can reverse diseases, prevent many diseases, and everybody's welcome. Every age, every color, every race, every religion, every single human. This is one thing we can all agree on, should be vegan. Everybody. And that's what I've noticed actually recently in something that I was calling the vegan community. I've realized that it's actually not a community. It's just a lot of vegans. And the thing about being vegan is it's hard to have a community of people that agree on everything except for veganism. There's too many differing opinions in this movement for everybody to get along and be friends. And guess what? That's fine, because we don't all need to be friends. We don't all need to agree on everything. We don't all need to get along. If you're vegan and you aren't causing the easily avoidable suffering and death of other earthlings because you have left the death cults that almost everyone else is still a part of and feasting on the bodies of Holocaust victims like zombies, flesh-eating zombies. If you've already left that cult, we're cool. That's really all I care about. I don't care if you have differing opinions on a lot of other things. As long as you're not paying for murder, you know, that's good enough for me. But anyway, that's a side note to the conversation I was just trying to have. It was just such a ridiculous spin on the article that we tried to do together, and you know, just very poor journalism in my opinion. So I just thought I'd set the record straight on what that conversation was supposed to be about and the answers the questions they asked me. So that's it for now. See you in the next video. End the animal holocaust. Go vegan. Peace.